bit confused about the types of ostensions. So according to your definition about the two different types of ostension, this quite depends on the what kind of evidence the communicators actually provide. But even though the communicators provide observational evidence, but addressees can consider this as interpretative. But on the other hand, also, even though the communicators provides interpretational evidence, addresses can think this is something observational. So I was a bit confused. In that cases, do we have to call the basic ostension just based on the what kind of evidence the communicators provide, or do we have to consider it depends on how the addressees consider? So that
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, well, okay. I hope that therefore that things have been clarified. So very good. Thank you. Fabio asked the following question: what roles do a speaker practical intentions play in choosing between basic and mentalistic ostensive stimuli, and how is this related to the process of mentalization? So basically, we assume that people behave and think efficiently. So say choosing between basic and mentalistic ostension choosing maybe too strong a word in a sense, but we resort quite spontaneously to a most efficient way of communicating. But what's special, because it's communication rather over, say, behaving on objects and so on, material objects, is that the efficiency of my communication to you depends on my making it efficient for you to get the information that I want to transmit. So the idea there is that spontaneously we resort to mentalistic, to interpretational evidence, to mentalizing, to the extent that this is efficient given the information we want to convey, the capacities of the addressee, and so on. And again, of course, the way it's related, if we rely on mentalistic, if we resort to mentalistic ostension, it is on the assumption that this is an efficient way for the addressee to get the information that we're trying to provide. So, Fabio, does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your clarifications and developments. Thank you very much. I'm very satisfied.
Thank you for saying so. Very good. So we move on now therefore to the next slide, and back to Grice basically. So the basic mentalistic ostension, distinction, and Grice. So Eduardo again. I have the impression that the distinction between basic and versus mentalistic ostension substantially maps onto Grice's distinction between deliberately and openly letting someone know versus meaning, or to use our 2015 paper, Beyond Speaker's Meaning schema, between determinate showing versus all the other case along the continuum from semi-determinate showing to determinate meaning. So the two things are not exactly the same thing, because for Grice there is no continuum precisely. His point was to have a demarcation between the two, and what we are arguing against is that there is such a demarcation. We say it's a continuum, so you can't map into the two things. But you're right, of course, that there's a clear relationship indeed between showing, giving direct evidence of something, or openly letting someone know, and so on and so on, which providing direct evidence, which is what you do in basic ostension, as opposed to conveying Grice in meaning, non-natural meaning in Grice's sense. Again, when you're along this continuum, you are in a whole zone that the existence of which Grice wanted to deny. So would you agree with reading with this qualification, yes. And if yes, considering the arguments raised in Beyond Speaker's Meaning, would you say that basic ostension has a pervasive role in human communication? Yes, absolutely, because it's for two reasons. First, there's quite a bit of purely basic ostension taking place among humans. And secondly, a lot of it is indeed in between, and that was the point we already made in the 2015 paper. And the change, what we correct, if you want, from the Beyond Speaker's Meaning paper is we say the amount of mentalization they need. First, well, in the case of where what we did assume until 2015 is that if you communicate ostensively, you also, part of a communication at least, goes through attributing to the speaker, to the communicator, an informative intention, and meta-representing it to some degree. And when we're saying if you are towards the showing end, no, there needn't be any meta-representation. And if you're somewhere in between, the role of meta-representation may be much lesser. And if maybe if you're fairly close to showing and you miss the meta-representational bit, you may still get enough of a communication to make it relevant to you. So, Eduardo, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers. So basically, it's like taking a kind of Gricean distinction or notion of deliberately and openly letting someone know, and playing more with the continuum that could be from cases of pure ostension to mentalistic and what's in between the two.
Yeah. Just one point. Just one word to say. Ostension needn't be deliberate in the sense of crisis. So it can be something more spontaneous. And it's got to be intentional, but deliberate may be too strong a word. But that's really a small point. Let's move to Tim's question, or two questions rather. So Tim said, firstly, the distinction between basic ostension and mentalistic ostension seems to me to reflect broadly a distinction between showing and meaning. Is this correct? Well, again, it was very broadly, or as Richard might say, minimally, yes. Why very broadly, why not quite, is because, again, we think there's a continuum, and also because showing is not, so Christ doesn't discuss showing so much. I mean, indeed, he has a phrase like deliberately and openly letting someone know, and so. But indeed, we're talking about the same kind of things, and some of the distinctions are fairly, if not obvious, at least salient and clear, and there the parallel is genuine. Secondly, Tim writes, the final line of the abstract states, correcting earlier pragmatic theories inspired by Grice, including our own, we argue that typical verbal communication makes use of both basic and mentalistic ostension. And so Tim, that was a quotation from our work, and Tim writes, my understanding of the account in the second edition was that typical verbal communication already made use of both types of communication. So why is this presented as a correction to earlier account? No, what we assume indeed from the beginning is that showing and meaning are involved in to various degrees in ostensive communication, and we had cases where it was pure showing. Think of a case in the park where is it Mary or Peter who moves back to let the other one see that their friend is coming in the distance. So there's no, that's a pure showing kind of thing. But what we assumed was that even in case of pure showing, comprehension would involve understanding, attributing to the communicator, to the shower in this case, communicative intention with the informative intention embedded, meta-representing, therefore, the informative intention. And that's So that's a real correction. We think that's not true. That was wrong. It's an open question to what extent, if at all, the addressee of ostension has to use meta-representation to get the relevant information communicated. And you go on asking, is it because the new view is that they evolve as two independent abilities, while the old view tend to see them as two sides of the same coin, and has it that even showing involves mentalizing. Yeah, the old view indeed was that even showing involved mentalizing. I don't very much get the metaphor about the two sides of the same coin. There's still different aspect, but and so the difference is not just of the. It's an important point we're making. These have evolved independently. There are two independent abilities that have evolved with different functions, and that merge in mentalistic ostension. But the point you're discussing here is, I think, a different one, and indeed the correction is that we assume condition of ostension, but as a matter of fact, or we didn't pay attention that mentalizing was always involved, and we now think that we were mistaken on that. So, Tim, does that answer your questions?
Unfortunately, Tim wasn't able to come today. He sent his apologies, but we will make sure he has access to the recording.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. I didn't know that. So,
Dan, somebody
yes.
does have a question. Angelica Anderson.
Yes, please, Angelica. Unmute yourself.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Fine. Long time no see.
Yes.
Your paper led me to a lot of reflections, and one of the main ones, and I would like to clarify in case I'm wrong, is that in fact we use basic ostension much more often than I previously thought, given that it involves less effort. So I was thinking about all kinds of small talk when you're at a party and people talk, how's the weather? Hello, your football team won yesterday, and so on. But one example that I think about a lot is in an elevator in the morning, for example, that people tend to greet each other. So all these people that enter the elevator and say, good morning, Angelica, and so on. I use basic, in this case, basic ostension, because I just reflect on the answer, just, good morning. But let's say I have a neighbor that never talks to me, he's kind of hostile, and this particular morning he says, good morning. And then because let's say I had a party the previous evening and I had a lot of noise, so that leads me to mentalistic ostension, because we have all this common ground, and there is the expectation of relevance leads me to mentalistic ostension. So I started to think of all these examples and thinking, well, I think there is much more basic ostension in our interactions, and the expectation of relevance and context and mutual ground is what would lead people to mentalistic ostension. Could you say if I'm on the wrong way in interpreting
No,
the paper?
I agree with what you say. I like your example. It's very nice. To think of just greetings where